This Saturday at noon Eastern Time, 33 drivers will be taking to the track here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for arguably one of the biggest events the channel has all year. The Indianapolis 250 is just about 4 days away, but 3 days away here on this coming Friday, we have the sister race to the Indianapolis 250, and it's still one of the most fun races that we have here on the channel. It's the Freedom 50 here in now the CSX IndyLights series. Ought to be a lot of fun, but before we get to the race, we have to set the starting grid for that event, and that is what we are here to do today. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to single car qualifying here for the Freedom 50 in the CSX IndyLights series. What's going on, everybody? Caleb here, and welcome back here to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway here in Indy 250 week. It's been a really fun series of events so far, and we still have a lot more in store. We're just getting started here for Indy 250 week, and got a lot of fun events planned. And one of those definitely going to be the Freedom 50. That race is always usually a lot of fun year in and year out, and very excited to be running this race once again. Last year's race was absolutely incredible, and definitely excited to see what this year's race will have in store. Yeah, like I said, we're here today to do single car qualifying. Of course, we have a little bit more than our traditional 15-car grid here for the CSX IndyLights series, with 3 cars unfortunately going home from the Indianapolis 250. They will be joining our grid for the Freedom 50 to bring the car count up to 18. And it'll definitely be really interesting to see them in action here in the CSX IndyLights series. We'll just have to wait and see how it all plays out. But, of course, I'm pretty sure you all get the gist up to this point for single car qualifying. Of course, drivers will go out, they'll get an out lap, and then they will have one timed lap to try and set the fastest time. And got 83-degree weather here today, and a bit of a wind to the southwest, so definitely ought to shake things up just a little bit. It'll be really interesting to see how this will affect everybody going around this racetrack. But with all that being said, let's take a look here at your contenders and your qualifying order for Freedom 50 single car qualifying here. Of course, doing things just a tad bit differently this year. Of course, for the most part, it is ordered by the number of channel wins, but people who are tied on channel wins, those were then sorted by the points in the CSX IndyLights series, coming into the third race of the season here at the Freedom 50. With that being said, taking a look here through your qualifying order, of course, Nathan Stapleton will be going out first there in the number 22 JBL machine. Then we have one of your Indy 250 DNQs, Brad Stover, will be going out second. Then it's Loudovick Charette. Loudovick's definitely going to be an interesting driver to watch, as she will be attempting the double, racing in both the Freedom 50 and the Indianapolis 250. And she will be driving in the Wawa Cup Series race at Charlotte as well, so I guess you could say Loudovick's doing the triple. I don't know. But behind Loudovick, you got the number 93 of Avery Alford and the 39 of Dylan Mathews, both of which fortunately had to sit out of the Indianapolis 250, but they will be racing in the Freedom 50 alongside Brad Stover and the rest of your CSX IndyLights series grid. Then you have Josh Marzak, Michael Lewis, Corey Case, Andrew Williams, Phillip Torres, Halley Anderson Jr., Matthew Hubert, Roberto Crown Jr., Jonathan Wong, Kacey Kojima, Felix Mare, and your last car out, but not least, will be the number 7 of Charlie Davenport. So it'll definitely be really interesting to see how things play out here from Freedom 50 qualifying. But we'll just have to wait and see how everything goes down. But, yeah, enough yapping from me. Let's get to our first driver here in Freedom 50 qualifying. Let's get the big staple out on the racetrack. And our first driver out here for Freedom 50 qualifying, we've got the hometown hero, the big staple, Nathan Stapleton, coming out on track there in that number 22 JBL machine. Of course, you all know Stapleton, owner of NS Racing, over in a lot of the series over here on the channel. Owner in the Wawa Cup Series, hers Sprint Series, and the Haas IndyCar Series as well. All of Nathan Stapleton, and excited to see what he can do here in his qualifying lap. Of course, like I mentioned before going into this, we got 82 degrees out here on the racetrack, and got some southeast winds up to about 7 miles an hour. That should definitely play into effect here today, but Nathan Stapleton Out first, going to be setting the benchmark for all these guys. But here we go. Coming across the line at 2:16. And going to reach 2:18 there going into turn number 1. Minimizing at 2:11 there as it goes through turn 1. And then minimizing at 2:09. Through turn 2. And here he goes down the back straightaway. He's going to reach 2:20 down the back straightaway into turn number 3. 2:12 there. And through turn 4. We saw a lot of guys in IndyCar qualifying gain a huge amount of time through turns 3 and 4. Stapleton went down to 2:08 there. I have to see how this lap holds up to the rest of the field, but visually a solid lap here for Nathan Stapleton. It's going to be a 41.617 for the Big Staple, and that is going to set the benchmark for the rest of these guys as we get into the rest of qualifying. But we'll have to see how this time holds up. We'll just have to wait and see how it all plays out. But let's get to our next driver here from Freedom 50 qualifying. Next up, we've got one of our Freedom 50 only entries here in qualifying. It's Brad Stover, driver of the number 81 Wraith Energy Chevrolet for Dog Pound Incorporated over in the Haas IndyCar Series. Unfortunately failed to make the cut for the 2025 Indianapolis 250. But, of course, there is no DNQs here in the Freedom 50, so Brad Stover is guaranteed a spot in this race regardless. And still going into this race with a lot on his shoulders and a lot to prove. Have to see where Brad Stover slots in as we get on to the main events. Nathan Stapleton, like I mentioned, set the benchmark with his lap at a 41.617. Have to see how Brad Stover can do here, coming across the line at 2:15. And going into turn number 1 there, just barely reached 2:17. I think we saw Stapleton get up to 2:18 there. Going into turn number 1. Turn 2, they're going to minimize, I think, at about 2:09 there. But he still definitely has the opportunity to gain some time here through 3 and 4. Have to see what he can do. He's going to reach 2:21 down the back straightaway. That's quicker than we saw at a Stapleton. Minimizing there at 2:12 through turn 3 and through turn 4. They get down to 2:07 there through turn 4, so might be a bit of a slower lap here from Brad Stover. We'll have to see. As he comes across the line, it's going to be a 41.679. That's going to slot him in right behind Stapleton there. Actually, just a couple of hundreds off, so not too bad of a lap there out of Brad Stover. And same for Stapleton. We'll have to see how it holds up to the rest of these guys. But, that being said, let's get to our next driver here in not Indy 250 qualifying, here in Freedom 50 qualifying. And next up, this is a big name here. We got Loudovick Charette here. Driver the number 18 Reese's Machine, and Charette, big name here during Indy 250 week, because Charette, I believe, is the only driver in this field that is going for the double. Charette is not only going to be racing in the Freedom 50, but also is going to be attempting, and I believe made, the Indianapolis 250, driving for Dog Pound Incorporated. So Charette going to be running both races. Have to see how she does in both. I remember correctly, she got a podium finish in last season's Indy 250, where she was also an Indy 250 only entry for Scuderia Team Velocity. So probably a lot of high hopes and some high expectations for Loudovick Charette. But here we go, coming across the line, 2:16 for Charette, and is just barely going to reach 2:18 going into turn at number 1, minimizing at 2:11 there. Through turn 2, going to minimize here at 2:10. Pretty solid pace so far out of Loudovick Charette down the back straightaway. We'll see what that 18 car can get up to. Oh, she's going to comfortably reach 2:21. She's going to reach 2:22 here down the back straightaway. A great turn 3 there. Just barely got down to 2:12. And through turn 4, minimizing at 2:08. This might be a lap here to take the top spot away from Nathan Stapleton. Here she comes down the front straightaway and to the line. It's going to be a 41.541 for Loudovick Charette. And to the top of the board goes the driver of the number 18. A great lap out of Loudovick Charette at just about a whole 10th clear of Nathan Stapleton. And that'll push Loudovick Charette on provisional pole for the time being. Like I've said with the other two drivers so far, still got a lot of drivers to go. Have to see how the lap holds up. But as far as what we've seen so far goes, a really good lap out of the 18 of Loudovick Charette. Up next here, we have another one of our Freedom 50 only entries. Number 93, Evans Ross Racing Toyota of Avery Alford. It was a really tough weekend for Evans Ross Racing. Fortunately, both cars ended up missing the Indianapolis 250 with Avery Alford and Dylan Mathews, who we'll probably end up talking about later here. Yeah, really tough to see for Evans Ross Racing because both cars were up in the top 10 in points. Both drivers have had great seasons. Alford got the win earlier on at Riverside. Mathews won at Willow Springs. So both these drivers going into this event with a huge chip on their shoulders. Have to see how they perform here in the Freedom 50. But Avery Alford gonna get to 215 there, going across the line and into turn 1 at 217. Minimizing at 210 there through turn 1. And through turn 2, gonna stay at 210. Down the back straightaway here for Avery Alford. Got some speed though, gotta reach 222 there. Going into turn number 3, we'll see if he can hold it. And yeah, down to 212 only there through turn 3. And through turn 4, gonna minimize at 207. But still, I think the back straightaway in turn 3 really made up for Alford there. I have to see across the line. He's going to go for a 41.607. That, I believe, is going to put Alford second on the board between Charette and Stapleton. So, good for Alford there, finding some speed there on the back straightaway and going into turn number 3. And provisionally, that will slot Alford in the second place. So, nice to see that from Alford. And let's get to our next driver here in qualifying. Here we go. We got Andrew Miller here in the number 10 machine. Next up here in qualifying. Of course, you all know Andrew Miller. Driver number 86 over in the Wawa Cup Series. And driver over in the Body Armor Pro Series as well. Doing really good, especially as of late in the Wawa Cup Series and in the Pro Series. And having a solid season up to this point here in the CSX IndyLights Series. Excited to see where Andrew Miller will stack up here for the 2025 Freedom 50. Right now, the time to beat is a 41.541 set by Loudovick Charette. See what Andrew Miller can do here. Coming across the front straightaway to the line. Going to reach 216 there. And is going to comfortably reach 218 there going into turn number 1. Minimizes there at 211 there through turn 1 and through turn 2. We stay at 210. Yes, he can. Looking pretty sporty here so far for Andrew Miller. We'll see what he can get up to here down the back straightaway. Going into turn number 3, he's going to reach 222. Going through turn number 3, minimizing, just barely reached 212 there, but almost kept it at 213. And through turn 4, minimizing at 208. This is looking like a good lap, maybe even a pole lap here out of Andrew Miller. Here he comes across the line. It's going to be a 41.506, and that is provisional pole for the number 10 of Andrew Miller. Swipes it away there from Loudovick Charette by about 4/100ths of a second. What a lap there out of Andrew Miller. And I know I've said it a lot so far this session, but we'll have to see how it holds up. But I don't know. That looked really sporty there out of Andrew Miller. What a lap there. Here we have the final of the Freedom 50 only entries. Here in qualifying, we got the number 39 of Dylan Mathews. Of course, teammate to Avery Alford there for Evans Ross Racing over in the IndyCar Series. Like I said, both Mathews and Alford DNQing the Indianapolis 250. Real stinger there for Evans Ross Racing, so Alford and especially Mathews looking for potentially a little redemption here in the Freedom 50. But now the time to beat is a 41.506 set by Andrew Miller. Mathews' teammate Alford was able to lay down a 41.607. Have to see what Mathews can set down here. Coming across the line, I think she just barely missed it on 216 there. Going to reach 217. going into turn number 1, minimizing out at 210. Through turn 2, going to... She's going to stay at 210 there. And going down the back straight away. She's going to be able to climb up to 222. Yes, she is. And going into turn number 3. Minimize there at 212 and through turn 4. 208 there for Dylan Mathews. Looking like a solid lap here in the going for that driver in the number 39. But here she comes across the line. Dylan Mathews is going to clock in at a 41.602. That is provisionally third on the board. Just a couple of thousandths of a second quicker than teammate Avery Alford. Actually, I believe just 5 thousandths of a second quicker. 41.602 to a 41.607. So the Evans Rouse Racing teammates qualifying really close to each other there. But yeah, Dylan Mathews provisionally in the third position as of now. Let's see how that holds up. Here's the number 4 of Josh Marzak. Up next here in qualifying. Marzak, of course, full-time driver here in the CSX IndyLights Series, and he's had a good season up to this point. Almost won the last race out at the Indianapolis road course and fought tooth and nail for it with Roberto Crown Jr., but unfortunately just barely came up short there in the second position. But still, a great season in the making here for Josh Marzak. I'm excited to see what he can do here in qualifying and in the main race in just a couple days' time. Here he goes, coming off of turn number 4 down the front straightaway to begin his lap. Across the front straightaway, it's going to be 2:15 there for Josh Marzak and 2:16 going into turn number 1, minimizing out at 2:10. Through turn 2 here, going to minimize at 2:09. So, not the greatest first half of a lap for Josh Marzak, but we've seen it time and time again in IndyCar qualifying. The second half can honestly kind of make or break your time here, so we'll have to see. Minimizing there at 2:12 there through turn 3, and through turn 4, going to minimize at 2:07. This might be the slowest time we've seen so far. Coming across the line for Josh Marzak is going to clock in at a 41.729. That is unfortunately the slowest time we have seen so far. That's going to put him provisionally in the 7th position behind Brad Stover there. Tough lap there from Josh Marzak, but yeah, well, starting position can definitely give you an advantage. It doesn't make or break a race, so Marzak will still have the opportunity to climb up towards the front of the field once we get to the Freedom 50. Have to see if he can do it, but Marzak is a veteran driver, so I have no doubt that he could definitely pull that off. Next up here, we've got the driver that's taken the channel by storm, honestly, so far here in the 2025 season, especially over in Andrew's Top Dragster Open. Number 15 of Michael Lewis, the winner of the season opener of the IndyLights Series at the Nazareth Speedway. Fortunately, didn't have the best of runs from the Indianapolis road course, which lost him the points lead. But definitely has a pretty good shot at getting that points lead back here from the Freedom 50. And I don't really usually talk about points much going into the Freedom 50, but it is a points race now, but still, honestly, it kind of has its own prestige to almost stay as a stay-alone event as well. But have to see how Michael Lewis fares here. Coming across the line, 2:14, I believe there for Michael Lewis, and 2:16 going into turn number 1. So far, honestly, kind of looking like Josh Marzak's lap that he just put down. But still, Lewis definitely has the opportunity to make up some ground here through 3 and 4. Have to see what he can do. Going to reach 2:21 there going into turn at number 3. Minimizing it to 11 there. Through said turn 3, through turn 4. Minimizing at 2:07. Not the best lap here out of Michael Lewis. We'll have to see where it slots him in at. 41.748. That is the slowest time that we've seen so far. A couple hundred slower than the 4 of Josh Marzak. So provisionally, that slots Michael Lewis in the 8th position. So, tough break there for Michael Lewis, but he'll still have the opportunity to make up some ground in the Freedom 50. And I think Michael Lewis is definitely another driver who can do that, considering his stellar performance in the season opener at Nazareth. Hey, we'll just have to wait and see how it'll all play out. But let's get our next driver out here for qualifying, here for the 2025 Freedom 50. Next up here in qualifying, we've got the number 2 of Corey Case. Out there in that number 2 Valvoline machine. Of course, Case was in this race last year after failing to qualify for the 2024 Indianapolis 250. But Case had a really great showing in this race last year. Ran a great race and finished up in the podium positions. So Case definitely no stranger to this track in this race car. Now driving full-time this season here in the CSX IndyLights Series. Have to see what he can pull off here in this year's Freedom 50. I guess the first hurdle will be qualifying, and have to see how Corey Case can do here. But here we go, coming across the line, 2:14 for Corey Case, and 2:16 going into turn number 1. Kind of seems like the laps are getting slower and slower here, because now this is looking a bit similar to Michael Lewis's time. 2:09 there through turn 2 down the back straightaway. We'll see if Case can maybe get up there to 2:21 or 2:22. He's going to get up to 2:21 there going into turn number 3. And through turn 4 here, minimizing at 2:07. We have a rough lap here from Corey Case, but we'll see where it slots him in at. Across the line, it's going to be a 41.773. And that is now the slowest time that we've seen so far here today. Originally puts him 9th underneath the 15 of Michael Lewis by a couple of hundredths there. So, tough qualifying session for the 2 of Corey Case. But if I do remember correctly, Corey Case did start towards the back of the field in the Freedom 50 last year and managed to claw his way towards the front. So, who knows, maybe we might see some shades of last year's Freedom 50 out of Corey Case. We'll just have to wait and see. We're halfway home here in Freedom 50 qualifying, and by the way, thank you all so much for tuning in. Certainly means a lot, but next up here, as we get into the second half of qualifying, we got the number 17 HERS machine of Andrew Williams. Of course, owner of Team Williams over in the Cup Series, Sprint Series, IndyCar Series, the whole 9 yards. Williams definitely did not have the best start to the season after crashing out after getting into the pit wall at Nazareth, but had a solid run at the Indy Road Course, managed to kind of start picking up his season, setting it back on track. Have to see if he can get some more momentum here in Freedom 50 qualifying. Here he comes across the line, 2:15 there for Andrew Williams. Going to reach 2:17 barely there going into turn number 1. And going to minimize there at 2:10 through turn 2. And minimize there at 2:09. So far, looking maybe about like a middle-of-the-road lap here for Andrew Williams. Gonna stay there at 2:21 there going into turn number 3. Minimizing out at 2:12. And through turn 4, gonna minimize at 2:07. Solid lap, I think, here in the making for the number 17 of Andrew Williams. Across the line, 41.679 for Andrew Williams. That is going to place him in the 7th position, I believe, between Brad Stover and Josh Marzak. So, all things considered, a solid lap here out of the number 17 of Andrew Williams. Next in line, we've got the number 14 machine of Phillip Torres making his way out on the track for his qualifying lap. We're now past halfway home here in Freedom 50 qualifying, and it's still Andrew Miller in the number 10 up at the top of the board with a 41.506. Only got 2 drivers so far that have made their ways into the 41.5s, that being Miller and Loudovick Charette with the 41.541. Have to see, though, where Phillip Torres will slot in here during his lap. But here he comes off of turn number 4. And down the front straightaway. Ready to begin his flying lap. Here he comes across the line. 2:14 for Phillip Torres and 2:15 going into turn number 1. Not the best speed down the front straightaway there for Phillip Torres, minimizing at 2:08 there off of turn number 2. Down the back straightaway going into turn number 3, going to get up to 2:20 there. Minimizing at 2:11 there through turn 3 and heading into turn 4. Minimizing at 2:06 there. Not the best lap here for Phillip Torres. This is probably going to be the slowest on the board. It's going to be a 41.893 for Phillip Torres. Might have some adjustments they need to make on that 14 machine before they get into the main event here in just a couple days. Still, like I've been saying for all these other guys, Torres still has a good shot at making up those positions in the main event. We'll just have to see how it all goes down. But provisionally 11th there for the number 14 of Phillip Torres. Up next here in qualifying, we got a driver that's relatively new to the channel. Ever since they started making starts here, they have hit the ground running. Have already picked up multiple wins. It's the number 6 Wawa machine of Halley Anderson Jr. Preparing for their qualifying lap. Anderson Jr. did not have the best season opener at Nazareth, but really picked it up on the top 5 finish from the Indianapolis road course. So going into the Freedom 50 with a bit of improved momentum. Have to see where they slot in as we head into the main event here in just a couple of days. Here goes Halley Anderson Jr. across the line at 214 miles an hour. He's barely going to get up to 216 there going into turn number 1. It's honestly kind of weird. It's almost kind of been seeming like the track's been slowing down a little bit over time. 208 there off of turn number 2. Up to 220 there going into turn number 3. And he's going to minimize coming off the corner there at 211 and through turn 4. And then minimize at 206 there. Have to see where Anderson Jr. is going to slide in here. As they come across the line, going to clock in at a 41.855. That is 11th quickest so far, right in between Corey Case and Phillip Torres. Not the greatest lap out of Halley Anderson Jr. Definitely has a bit of a hole to climb out of, but seen plenty of drivers make their way from the back to the front in this race in years past. I doubt that Halley Anderson Jr. will be an exception to that. I'll have to see how Anderson Jr. does in the main race, but definitely has a bit of a hill to climb. Up next here, we have the number 26 machine of Matthew Hubert heading out here. Hubert not had the greatest to go at it so far this season, but definitely no better race to turn it around than here in the Freedom 50, especially in that freshly painted number 26 Celsius livery. But I'm sure Hubert would at least definitely like to have a better race this year than he did last year. Of course, 2024 Freedom 50 unfortunately got involved in an accident towards the later stages of the race. Doesn't want to repeat it this time around, and a good qualifying position would definitely help with that for Matthew Hubert. But here he comes here down the front straightaway at the line. Going to be 214 there, going into turn number 1 at 216. Going to minimize out there at 209. through turn 1 and turn 2 as well. Have to see if he can pick up the pace a little bit here for the second half of his lap. Going to enter turn 3 at 2:21. Minimizing it out at 2:11 and through turn 4. 2:07 is going to be where Matthew Hubert holds. And coming across the line, it's going to be a 41.779 for Matthew Hubert. Going to slot him into the 11th position between Corey Case and Halley Anderson Jr. And again, honestly, it's kind of interesting. It almost kind of seems like the times are trending a little bit downward so far. Here for Freedom 50 qualifying, as Matthew Hubert provisionally slips into the 11th position. Oh, and Michael Lewis went out earlier. We were kind of discussing the topic of storylines. Well, this guy has made absolute headlines as of late here on the channel. At the number 11 New Balance machine of Roberto Crown Jr. Finally got his first win on the channel at the last race out here in the IndyLights series from the Indianapolis road course after a hard-fought battle with the 4 of Josh Marzak. Crown going into the Freedom 50 with a lot of high hopes and a lot of high morale. Could definitely be the making of a really good showing here for Crown Jr. Could he potentially get his second win and go 2 in a row in the Freedom 50? We'll just have to wait and see here as he comes across the line. 2:14 there. Across the line for Crown, going to reach 2:16 going into turn number 1. He had to check up there quite a bit, it looked like. Going to minimize at 2:09 though. There through turn 1 and 2:08. Just barely got down to 2:08 there through turn 2. See if he can improve here the second half of the lap. 2:21 just barely there going into turn number 3. And here he comes through turn 4. Going to minimize at 2:06. Just barely for Crown Jr. Probably not the lap that Crown was looking for. Going to clock in at a 41.834. That is going to be 12th provisionally for Roberto Crown Jr. in between Matthew Hubert and Halley Anderson Jr. So yeah, probably not the lap that Roberto Crown Jr. was looking for. But he's still got the whole race in the Freedom 50 ahead of him. Let's see what he can do. Up next here, we got the number 20 machine of Jonathan Wong going out here for his qualifying lap. Nice to see Jonathan Wong back here in the driver's seat here on the channel in that number 20 Culver's machine. To see what he can do here for qualifying for the 2025 Freedom 50. Definitely going to be interesting to see because, kind of like I mentioned earlier, it almost kind of seems like the lap times are kind of trending downwards, which is probably what Andrew Miller definitely wants to see because he still stands at the top of the board with that 41.506. Will somebody break the trend? We'll just have to wait and see. Jonathan Wong, though, going across the line, I think just barely got up to 2:15 there, and it's just going to get up to 2:16 there going into turn number 1. Minimize at 2:09 there going through turn number 2. On the back straightaway, looks like he is going to get up to 2:21 here. Going into turn number 3, going to minimize at 2:11 there. Coming out of the corner and through turn 4, let's see, going to minimize at 2:07. So it looks like not the best but not the worst lap here for Jonathan Wong. Here he comes across the line. He's going to clock in at a 41.748. That is actually going to tie Jonathan Wong with the number 15 of Michael Lewis. They both set the exact same time of a 41.748. Up next, we have the number 19 machine of Kacey Kojima heading out onto the racetrack. Of course, a rookie here to the CSX IndyLights series, and I'd have to fact check myself, but I do believe a rookie to the channel in general. And so far, Kojima's kind of hit the ground running. He's had a really good season so far. 6th, I believe, at Nazareth, and a podium finish at the Indianapolis road course. I believe Kojima's entering this race with a top 5 seed in the point standing, so been a good season so far here for the rookie. And I have to see what she can do here in her first Freedom 50. Maybe she'll be the one to break the kind of downward spiral we've seen in timing. We'll have to see. Right across the line, it was 2:14 there for Kacey Kojima and 2:16 there. Heading into turn number 1, minimizing there at 2:09. And 2:09 again there through turn number 2. See what she can muster up here down the back straightaway. Heading into turn number 3. Gonna get up there to 2:21. Is barely heading into turn number 3. Minimizing there at 2:11. Not bad there through turn 3 and through turn 4. Minimize there at 2:07. See where Kojima slots in here. They come across the line. It's going to be a 41.818 for Kojima. It's going to slot her in the 13th position between Roberto Crown Jr. and Hubert. So the downward tick that we've seen in times this session continues. And like I said, Andrew Miller's probably loving this so far, but still got 2 more drivers to take to the track. We'll have to see if one of them can maybe break the trend and potentially go for the pole. We'll have to see. But still got 2 more drivers left to go out here from Freedom 50 qualifying. 2 more drivers left to go here in Freedom 50 qualifying, and our penultimate driver to take to the track is the number 8 Cheddar's machine of Felix Mare. Excited to see what Felix can do here behind the wheel of an open wheel car. I believe that this is the first time that Mare has competed full-time here on the channel. Of course, I made some starts last season in the Lenovo Pro Series, and I think they've made some on and off starts in special events and maybe in the Sprint Series so far this season. It'll be interesting to see where Felix Mare will line up for the main event here in a couple days. Coming down the front straightaway, 2:15 across the line for Felix Mare. Not quite going to get up to 2:17 going into turn number 1, but held 2:16 for quite a while. 2:10 there through turn number 1. 2:09 though there through turn number 2. But so far, maybe one of the better laps that we've seen as of late here from Felix Mare. Gonna reach 2:21 there going into turn number 3. Minimizing just barely there at 2:11 and through turn 4. And then minimize out at 2:07. To see where this 8 car lines up as going to come across the line. It's going to be a 41.745 for Felix Mare. That's going to slot them in provisionally in the 9th position between Josh Marzak and Michael Lewis. So a little bit of a break in the trend there. Felix Mare taking a bit upwards there and provisionally slots in the 9th position. So, solid lap there out of the number 8 of Felix Mare. But we got one more driver left to go. So let's get down to it here from Freedom 50 qualifying. Just one more driver left to go here in qualifying for the 2025 Freedom 50. And here goes the number 7 of Charlie Davenport heading out onto the racetrack. Again, just thank you all so much for tuning in. And I just got one more car to go before we can officially set the starting lineup for the 2025 Freedom 50. But I have to see what Davenport's got in store. You know, they always say, gotta save the best for last. And see what Charlie Davenport has stored in the engine and the driver's seat of that number 7 machine. Andrew Miller hoping to hold on to that pole position with a 41.506. Have to see if he can hold on to it. But down the front straightaway for the final lap of Freedom 50 qualifying, Charlie Davenport. They just barely reached 216 going across the line. He gets up to 217. They're going into turn number 1. I don't know if this is quite Andrew Miller's pace, but this is looking like a pretty sporty lap out of the number 7 of Charlie Davenport down the back straightaway. Is he going to reach 222? Yes, he is. First 22 we've seen in a minute. They're going into turn number 3. Going to minimize there at 212. And minimizing at 208 there through turn 4. This is going to be a real trend breaker lap here for Charlie Davenport. Don't know if it's going to be pole level, but this is looking like a really solid lap. It's going to be a 41.595. That is going to put Charlie Davenport on the inside of the second row for the Freedom 50. He's going to slot into the 3rd position. There in between Loudovick Charette and Dylan Mathews, only our third driver on the day to set a 41.5. And it is in the final car out. So, now what I said before he said his lap, save the best for last. Well, Davenport definitely saved the best for last with a really good lap time out of that number 7 machine. But Andrew Miller is going to be your pole sitter for the 2025 Freedom 50. Huge congratulations there to Miller. And just really excited to see what all will go down in the Freedom 50. But let's take a quick look over your official starting lineup for the 2025 Freedom 50. And we'll close out here from Freedom 50 qualifying. Well, a very eventful qualifying session here from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Once again in the books. And after all is said and done, it is Andrew Miller who's going to nab the pole for the Freedom 50 with a time of 45.506. So great stuff there for Andrew William, and will definitely give him a lot of momentum going into the Freedom 50. But taking a look further on down your grid, you got Loudovick Charette qualifying in the 2nd position. Good stuff there for Loudovick. And you got Charlie Davenport. Great stuff there for him. Like I kind of mentioned, it almost kind of seemed like the times were trending downward as the runs went along. So Charlie Davenport definitely breaking that trend, being the last car out and going up to 3rd on the board. So that's some good stuff there from Charlie Davenport, relatively new to the channel. Definitely excited to see what he can do here in the Freedom 50 and in the rest of the CSX IndyLights Series season. Then you got Dylan Mathews and Avery Alford, 2 of our Indy 250 DNQs, qualifying pretty well. So good stuff there for them. Then you got Nathan Stapleton, Brad Stover, Andrew Williams, Josh Marzak, Felix Mare, Michael Lewis, Jonathan Wong, Corey Case, Matthew Hubert, Kacey Kojima, Roberto Crown Jr., Halley Anderson Jr., and Phillip Torres will be rounding out your field for the 2025 Freedom 50. Definitely, like I said, looking forward to the race. It's going to be a lot of fun, as it usually is. And that race will be going up on Indy 250 Carb Day, Friday, May 23rd at noon Eastern Time, just after Indy 250 Carb Day practice. We've got a 20-lap race ahead of us, so it should be a pretty quick race, which we kind of like it that way. It's kind of just like a short sprint to the finish, which is always usually pretty exciting. Will they keep it clean and green, though? We'll have to wait and see. We had a caution in last year's race, which definitely shook things up and gave us an absolutely incredible finish. But you don't know what's going to happen until the checkered flag flies, so definitely be interesting to see how that race goes down. But like I said, that race will be going up at noon Eastern Time on Friday, May 23rd. And then, of course, you got the big race, the 12th running of the Indianapolis 250 on Saturday, May 23rd at noon Eastern Time. And also, might as well promote this while I'm here. You got the inaugural Little 250 presented by Gamebridge. That race will be going up the day before the Freedom 50 on Thursday, May 22nd at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It's one of the longest events we're going to be running here on the channel, but it is going to be a lot of fun. I can assure you all that. I definitely recommend you all watch that race and stick out to the end, because there's a lot of surprises in that race, a lot of great racing, and it was just awesome all around. So I definitely recommend you all check that one out. That will conclude festivities here from Freedom 50 single car qualifying here from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Once again, congratulations to Andrew Miller for nabbing the pole for the 2025 Freedom 50. And like I said, I will see you all on track here once again for the main race on Friday, May 23rd at noon Eastern Time. Thank you all so much for tuning in here to Freedom 50 qualifying. And as always, you all take care, and y'all have a good one.